friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop. Hope you're all doing real well. Over the years I've had a number of requests to do a shop tour, and so I finally got the shop cleaned up enough to do a little bit of a tour. We're going to tour my office, which is the room I'm in right now, and where I do most of the work, to be honest with you. On the instrument repairs, I do, I would say 85% of the work right here at this table that I'm sitting at. And you've seen that in all the videos. And then, the other 15% is done in the woodworking side of the shop, and we're going to tour that as well. I hope you enjoy this shop tour. Tell your friends. Please subscribe to the channel if you've not already subscribed. And as always, give me a thumbs up. That helps get these videos out in front of more people. Thank you.
And here's what it looks like coming in the front door of my building. And as you can see, something is missing. We need siding. Here's the shop goes from just from that corner there all the way up, really up to this far end, and this end is the metal shop. This is where all the magic happens on the instruments in here and through that garage door. So let's go inside and see how it's arranged. This little vestibule that we're in is very small. It's only about 8 by 8, something like that. You can see I've got a little file cabinet there for extra storage. These are some electronics projects that are on top of the cabinet that I'm presently working on. They're not just sitting there. Here's a place where I can store an extra instrument or two if I need to. And in this corner is where I put the instruments that are going out to UPS. And sometimes the UPS driver comes that day and picks them up, and most of the time I have to drive them 20 miles into town. Through that door is into the wood workshop, through the glass doors into the office, and through this door is into the metal shop. Just to give you your bearings, we'll go into the office, and you've been in here a lot, but maybe you haven't seen it so much from this perspective. Just to the right of the door, you can see that I have a wall of supplies. These are retail items, you could say, for sale. Strings and accessories. Just as an example, here are the deer antler saddles that I presently have made up. And those are made up by Ron now. And these are actually antler saddles that I've rejected that Ron made. And he's learning how to make them and which ones are going to work and which ones aren't. You can just see I have a lot of stuff. There's hair up here for bows. There's violin pegs, bass parts, just pretty much a little bit anything and everything. Going exactly opposite of that wall over here, I've got a little refrigerator. This is my time clock, a place to hang another instrument. And this cabinet here is mostly full of strings and miscellaneous accessories. And some of this stuff is just junk, like right there. That's just junk. Should be out of here. That's just junk for the most part. There's my printer. There's my computer desk. It's pretty small in here. I would say it's nearly 20 feet by 12 feet, something like that. And so it's not a big office. There's a little extra storage where I've got some instruments finished and they're waiting to be picked up. There's the bathroom, and here's the storage cabinet. Take a look in the storage cabinet, you see what I have in here. For the most part, it's just things I use to work on instruments, different finishing supplies, dies, things for just working on instruments, Dremel tool accessories, things like that, sandpaper, paper for my printer, things like that. Over here, up here I have some chisels that aren't really much good, but I grind them to specialty needs when I need them. I have a dust mask hanging there. There's my fret wire bender. There's my CDs for my band. There's 3 different CDs the band has out. This was a picture of my Uncle Don Brown and his group back in probably the 60s. And then down here, this tray has all my different glues, you know, different, like the accelerator, you know, filler, plastic wood for filler or whatever. Just miscellaneous different things. Just a good place to keep them out of the way. This cabinet, for the most part, I don't use much in there except for the little instrument screw drawer. That's for the most part, that's about all I use. Otherwise, there's just nuts and bolts and things in there for the most part. Up on top up here is where I keep some of the sensitive stuff, like my glasses and this new tool that I made. And here's a heat, you know, a infrared thermometer, I guess you'd say. And of course, just we have a tray here for sandpaper and a miscellaneous tray where I know what's in there, but it's mostly X-Acto knives and different things. Here's some of my nut slot files. Screwdriver rack with a lot of miscellaneous files here. Taper tools for tapering holes and things. I keep my straight edge razor blades right here because I use them a lot. Some toothpicks, always using those. My leather for clamping and things. My wedges. My tools that I use the most frequently are in this open tray where I can get to them very easily. My measuring tools back here. Here's another one of my measuring tools that should be back there. My calipers is what they are. And of course, on the wall, then you got all my different miscellaneous tools, drills, clamps, just different things that I use. And of course, I have my lamp here that provides the lighting. And here is the camera that does all the magic for the most part, mounted to the wall. And the table is a fairly good sized table. You can work on up to a base on here fairly well. The base is a little bit cramped, obviously a big upright base, but otherwise it works real well for all the other instruments. And of course, then we have my computer equipment and my computer desk. I pretty much built the computer myself. It's got several hard drives in it. I think there's 4 in there. And there's a couple of 2 terabyte hard drives in there for video storage. And you know, it's a pretty fast computer, but I mean, I'm sure they make them much faster. On this wall we have some, this is a big article that was done on me years ago through the Gasco-Sage Electric Co-op. They had several 100,000 people in their distribution, and that brought in a ton of business. So that was a really good article for me. This is an award that I was given for my contribution to the Bluegrass Pickin' Time Music Festival that was held on Memorial Day back years ago. It was the oldest continually run bluegrass festival west of the Mississippi for many, many years, but that has gone defunct. And here is a picture of my band back in 2005. We were playing, and Rhonda Vincent came up on stage with us, which I thought was really cool. She signed the picture for us. And this was another award that I was voted, you know, this is in memory of a Howard Hull. He had a festival up in Illinois. It was the Illinois Traditional Country Music Association. They used to have all kinds of contests, and the crowd would vote on their favorite performer for the festival, and I was voted the favorite one year, so that was a really neat gift to get. Here's my Stuart McDonald plans that are probably at least 30 years old, hanging on the wall here. And let's see, got all kinds of computer equipment here. That's my main tower. This is my sound for my audio on my computer. And this is a CD duplication tower. This is a DVD duplication tower. So this is where I duplicate the DVDs that I sell for my training. This is a CD printer. It actually prints right on CDs. And it's a pain in the neck, though. It's pretty old. It gives me trouble. This is my shrink wrap equipment for shrink wrapping CDs. And that's about it. I could use some more in this corner. I could use some shelving and some more storage. That would be really helpful. Up on the wall, I've got another place to hang another guitar. And over here, I've got another place to hang another guitar. And then I've got a couple of little floor mounts here where I can set a guitar that I'm working on. And over here, that one I use mostly for mandolins, but it'll handle a guitar also. So that's pretty much the whole office and how it's laid out. Next, we'll go through the regular wood shop. As we leave my office, we go out this door and we're headed out towards the front. This area is where UPS leaves their deliveries in this little small room here. There's 3 doors. This door goes to the left, goes into my metal shop. The door to the right here goes into the wood shop. And so here's the view of coming into the wood shop. As you come in to the right, there's a cabinet of just storage for screws and nails and things like that. Those jars there with screws in it is something just kind of silly, really. It's a sentimental thing. My grandfather used to do that, so I just did it more or less in memory. I have an air compressor down here, some hoses on the wall. You can see my air gun there, some cord storage up here. This is just mostly junk, and that's the truth. There's a little bit of spray stuff in here. I've got a battery charger in here for charging up my cordless tools, and then I've got this big toolbox, and it's pretty much full of different tools, mostly just mechanic type and carpentry type tools. There's a lot of junk still in here. This is a mobile cart for my plywood storage. It moves around pretty easily, actually. It's on wheels, so it moves real easily. We've got a 9-foot garage door here on the left that's insulated. These instruments on the floor there are my instruments. That barrel's just got wood stored in it. There is the planer that I bought at the Grizzly tent sale. I got a real good deal on that, about half price roughly. Had to do, a number of things to it. It was very bent up. It had probably been run into with a forklift or something. But I was able to straighten out everything, including the height adjustment here. This actually spins freely now. It's being blocked by my chainsaw sharpener. It spins very freely now. It used to wobble, and it did that when you spun it before, but it spins perfect now. And so the height and everything works perfectly on this. It's a really good planer. I'm real happy with it. This cabinet above is just paint storage for the most part, and few other little things. Keep my soldering iron in there. Mostly here I've got junk piled in front of this window, which I need to clean through. Yet I still have a lot of stuff left over from when I moved here from my old shop, and that's been a year and a half, 2 years now. We've got a lot of storage in these compartments. I've got chainsaw things, leather working stuff, rubber. This is where I store a lot of rubber goods, different miscellaneous things. This is mostly pop rivets and case building stuff when I build road cases. I don't do that much anymore. This is just a little bit of everything. There's ebony wood stored in here. There's violin clamps stored in there, and just a whole bunch of other storage things. Here's where I keep my clothespins for gluing on the kerfing. Here's my base clamps. They're much bigger. And just a lot of miscellaneous hardware stuff. Again, these are just miscellaneous hardware things. More miscellaneous hardware. This is mostly screws, nuts, and bolts, things like that. Mostly screws and there's electrical stuff in there. There's a lot of instrument parts down in here too, as you can see. So I use all these storage spaces, and I know what's in pretty much every one of them. This is mostly finishes and lacquer thinners and things like that. This little cabinet doesn't really store much of anything. I've got some specialty bits here on the wall, different kinds of bits and things. Little caulking storage area there. This going around. There's my thickness sander you've seen in a lot of videos. There's my homemade thickness sander that I use most often. That's probably the most used tool besides my bandsaw in the shop. This up here is lumber storage, and pretty much this whole rack is dedicated to instruments. There's a little bit of foam rubber at the top up there, but otherwise everything pretty much on that rack could wind up inside of an instrument at some time. As a matter of fact, I'm storing the top to the guitar I'm building up here as we speak to keep it up out of the way where it won't get damaged. As we move on around, this rack is just miscellaneous lumber storage. You can see up on the top I have my guitar molds. I used to boil the sides and bend them to those molds, and that worked really good. But I'm moving up with my new electric bender. But all this is just scrap wood storage. Well, for the most part. There's some good wood in there too. Like that is Osage orange right there. And I might build something out of that someday, a mandolin or something. There's some walnut in the rough, and more walnut and more Osage orange. So there's a lot of stuff up there. Not really much of any real benefit. I thought you might like to see how I store my dowel rods. I have a lot of dowel rods. I put them in the corner and I have them in a can, and the short pieces go down in the can. Of course, they're a little hard to get to, but anyway, I just store them like that, and it's just handy. Then if we go back to these tools, we left off there at my thickness sander, my homemade thickness sander you've seen so many times. This is just a Grizzly belt and disc sander. Then here's a little version of a Delta belt and disc sander, and I set them up for different things. This one here, I grind the angle to the guitar saddles on this one a lot of times. This is a polisher, a metal polisher here, and a little sander. Got that from Northern Tool, I think it was. And then we have our oscillating spindle sander, which is really handy. And then we have a jet wood lathe. And when I use that, I have to move my spindle sander out of the way a little bit. But it's not, I don't have a lot of room. My shop is actually about 24 by 24, which is not bad size. It's like a 2-car garage. There's my tools up on the wall for turning. For my friends in millimeter land, we're actually going anti-clockwise here. And so here's my polisher, my buffer, and this does a real good job on big surfaces, and I use it quite often. These blades up here are for my sawmill. Those are those sawmill blades. I still got quite a few there. I bought 10 of them to start with. I think I've got 5 left. And there's an old mold. That was my original mandolin mold that I started with back in the early 80s. And there's a 12-string guitar mold. And below this here we've got my just my Hitachi 12-inch cutoff saw. It's a pretty good saw. I just put a brand new switch on it. The switch went out on it. Then I have my pipe clamps storage here, and other kinds of clamps in between them, and you can see how I've got them stored on that deal there. And then I have my other C clamps and miscellaneous corner clamps and things, and then some large kind of C clamps that I built here that I can use wedges with and things. But and there's my current mandolin mold that I use. That one there was taken off of the Lloyd Loar, that 1924 Lloyd Loar mandolin. And as we keep going anti-clockwise, then you can see some old drills and things. I just pulled these out of storage today. I'm going to get new batteries for these and give these to my wife so she'll quit using my good stuff. And we've got more storage down here, and to be perfectly honest with you, most of the stuff under there is just junk. Then this big table here it's a real big table. It's roughly 8 feet long, and it's about 34 inches deep, probably, something like that. And I've got a vise on the corner there of the table. It's a big heavy Formica, so it's a very heavy table. It's all steel welded, so it really takes 2 men and a boy to carry it. It's very heavy. So it'd be a good work surface, but I'm going to have to first get rid of my Dewalt Radial Arm Saw. This thing works perfectly, but I think I'm going to go ahead and sell it. I've even got it out. I got the books out on it and everything. I've got the original books. I'm sure this came from the 50s. I'm not positive of that. It could be in the 60s, but I believe it's from the 50s. And so it's a very old saw, but it works like a champ. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Then we move around to my little bandsaw, and I say little because it's a 14-inch bandsaw, but I keep my small blades on it for doing detail type work. The post here, I just keep, things like levels and rulers, yardsticks, things like that on here, T-squares. And in this little tray right here, I keep mostly kerfing and fret wire, and that's really all I keep in there is fret wire and kerfing. In these drawers, this one's pretty much empty. Well, it's got some old molds and things. This was a 3/4 size mandolin that I built. That's, as far as I know, that might be the only 3/4 size mandolin in the world, and that's a great little mandolin. And this is my violin mold that I use. And this is my neck setting mold for the mandolins. When I set the neck on a mandolin, I use that. In this drawer, I have mostly just patterns, and I have a little bit of pickguard material in there too, but these are mostly patterns for making different things, the guitars and mandolins and different violins and things. In this one, it's all binding. You think I have enough binding? I have a lot of binding laying in there. And in this one, it's mostly junk, but it's instrument related junk, and I go in there quite frequently, but it's mostly just junk. Then after that, keep going anti-clockwise here. Now we're to my Buffalo drill press. Not a very good drill press, but gets the job done. I put a new chuck on it recently, and that seemed to help it a lot. Although I got to tell you, I feel like there's a little bit of run out in that chuck if you don't tighten it down just right. It was a cheap chuck. Say that 10 times real fast. Then we have my drill storage here. This is for the drill press, and I also have leather working stuff up here. You can see my leather working tools, and here's a big piece of granite for leather working, and some leather working stamping and things like that. I used to do a lot of leather work years ago, and I have more drill stuff here, just miscellaneous things. These are some of my nailers, air nailers and different things down here. And then we're back to the door where we came in, so we've made a full circle now. So now we'll look at the center island here. We walked all the way around all these tools. You can see, obviously, there's the guitar I'm working on. You can see I flipped it upside down in the mold now. So actually the top is actually up now. And you can see that the back has a taper to it because it's off the mold bottom here. I can put my hand under it, you can see, and then it's touching the bottom of the mold back here. So, and that's my table saw that we mentioned in an earlier video. It's a Grizzly also. I'm pretty much a Grizzly shop these days. Then in this column here, I just have a few little things stored, pencils and bits. And this here is also a neck cutting jig for cutting the neck slots in mandolins. This is my central vacuum system, comes in right here. I do have a real cool central vacuum system. This is the remote control for it. All I have to do is touch this, and you can hear it kick on. And then I have all these gates to each implement, or each machine. And here's one for just hoses to vacuum the shop. And that hose is just long enough to reach everywhere in the shop, which is very handy. Works really good. I have 220 and 110 electric on this post. Most of my big machines are 220. The smaller machines are 110. So then here's my Grizzly. By the way, I will tell you that almost all my big machines are on rollers, so I can move them very easily. And yeah, this rolls really easy too. This is my big, I call this my big bandsaw, even though it's still just a 14-inch saw, but I keep the bigger blades on this and I use it most often. Then as we go around, again, anti-clockwise to the big jointer, I bought this in the tent sale as well. Got a real good deal on that, and I'm real happy with that jointer. The motor was bad in it, but I had to put a capacitor on the motor. I say the motor was bad, it was just the capacitor. So once I put the capacitor on, everything worked fine. It's a big 220 deal. I don't remember if it's 2 horse. I think it's 2 horse. Can't remember. It's about an 8-inch wide jointer, I think it is. Might be 10. I think that's 8. Then here's my router table. It's homemade, and I just have a router under there that I don't use that often, but it's real handy when you do need to use a router table. This comes in real handy. Most of the time I use this as a work surface, and you can see my scale. This one weighs up to about 80 pounds, so this is perfect for UPS and the things that I ship out of here. And for the most part, that's it. You can see my dust collection goes around all along the floor, and you know it's pretty much out of the way I've got the dust collection designed, and it goes out the wall right here, and it goes into the rest of the machine shed where I can. It's an outside. It would be kind of like a carport. It's in where we park tractors, and in fact it's where I park my Bobcat, and I can empty the sawdust outside. I don't have to have that inside the shop here, which is real nice. But that's pretty much it. So we're back here at the Wood Lathe, and this is just a panoramic view from the Wood Lathe back in the back corner, and just give you an idea of the shop. Again, it's about 24 by 24. That window goes into my office, and as a matter of fact, we'll just go up there and take a look. You can see there's my tool wall there. I put the window in here deliberately because I thought it would be kind of nice. I'm sitting at my desk there and I can see who's doing what in my shop, and I can also raise that window and talk through the screen if I need to. So, and then on the nice spring days and fall days, it's really nice to open that big door when you're working in here and just let the fresh air in. That's just about it. By the way, the ceilings are pretty tall in here. They're, I'd say, every bit of 10 feet. 10-foot 2x4s weren't long enough, and I had to double row the top and the bottom both to get it up there. So it's probably 10.5 feet, something like that. It's a pretty decent shop. I've just about got it like I want it now. This big area here, I'm thinking about putting a workstation table in this area right here. I can move these tools back a little bit because there's a lot of wasted space back in here. So I have room to put a big workstation right up in this general area, I think. And I think that's kind of needed, and I'll be doing that before too long, I imagine. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the shop tour.